Good evening, everyone in the Northern Territory. Welcome and thank you for joining us tonight for this webinar, which is being brought to you in a partnership between Integrity Systems Company and the Northern Territory Government. My name is Cherie Young and I'm the Communications Manager here at Integrity Systems Company, and I'll be your host for the webinar tonight. This webinar, just so you know what it's all about, is designed to help you better understand the red meat integrity system and how it works to ensure our industry continues to produce quality red meat that is safe to eat and fully traceable. Just like to say thank you for taking the time out to join us tonight, and also for any questions that you might have through the webinar. I just wanted to point out at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A box, and that's where you can pop your questions in there. And we've got a team of ISC people, representatives, as well as Renee McLean from the Northern Territory Government on hand to answer any questions that you might have to do with the content that we're going to cover tonight. Also, just wanted to point out this session is being recorded, and you'll get an email in the coming days with a recording and some resources as well as the slides, and any questions and answers that come up, we'll send the transcript for that as well. So the topics we're going to cover tonight, I'm going to start off with a bit of an overview about ISC and our red meat integrity system. Then our Quality and Compliance Manager, Elizabeth Bradley, will join the webinar and provide an update on Livestock Production Assurance Program. She'll also touch on a new self-assessment process that's coming in soon for accreditation and re-accreditation with the program. Next will be George Basher, who's our operations analyst, and he is very knowledgeable on the NLIS, and he will be giving a live demonstration of some key functions to do with the NLIS that you need to know about, mainly to do with property to property transfers is a big one, plus some other key sort of functions that you need to kind of understand. And he's also going to provide a basic demonstration of how to use the E&VD web system as well. So creating consignment, how you submit that, and how you can print it out if you need to, or email it. And we've also got a little video to show you about the app that might be something of use, the offline transmission that you can do with that if you're out of ranges. I'm sure many of you would be often. Renee McLean from the NT government will then join, and she's going to provide a NT specific sheep and goat eID implementation update for you as well. So don't forget to put your questions in the Q&A. We'll do our best to get to those, and yeah, enjoy. This is all recorded, so you'll get the recording in the coming days. Now, by way of background, just wanted to put you in the picture in case you weren't aware. Integrity Systems Company was formed in 2017, and its chief task is to manage Australia's red meat integrity system. So the key focus areas are on-farm assurance, animal identification and traceability, and it's all about ensuring that we continue to meet these key requirements, which give us global market access, which is obviously really important. So ISC is guided by Safe Meat, which is a partnership between industry and government, and the Supply Chain Task Force, which is a group made up of representatives from all the different peak industry councils that represent the industry. This diagram just shows you a bit of an overview about where ISC fits in as a wholly owned subsidiary of Meat and Livestock Australia. We work together with MLA to service the industry as a service provider. So that sort of shows you where we sit there. Now, for a bit more of a deeper dive into the programs we run. So we have two key programs which underpin livestock traceability and the food safety on farm. The first one there is the NLIS, or the National Livestock Identification System. And it's Australia's system for identifying and tracing cattle, sheep and goats. It reflects Australia's commitment to biosecurity and food safety and provides Australia with a competitive advantage in a global market. All the animals are identified with an accredited NLIS tag or device from their property of birth, and as they are bought, sold and moved through the chain, each movement is recorded on the NLIS database. Using this information, the NLIS is able to provide a life history of an animal's movements. Now, this system is underpinned by state and territory legislation, and it enhances Australia's ability to track livestock during disease and food safety incidents. So it's very important. Now, the current NLIS system has been around now for over 20 years, and a major project is underway to develop a new and more user-friendly system. It's due to be delivered by 30 June 2026, and it will be offering a vastly improved user experience to the current system, which is now getting quite old. Now, the other key program we have is the LPA, or the Livestock Production Assurance Program, which is the on-farm assurance program, which again underpins our access for our red meat. LPA covers the on-farm management of biosecurity, animal welfare and food safety, and accreditation with it provides the tick of assurance for your product from the producer, from yourselves, right through to the consumer. Now, tucked in the middle there, we've got the NVD or the eNVD, the LPA NVD or eNVD, which are legal documents which are used to communicate the food safety and treatment status of every animal as it moves through the supply chain. Now, the central component which connects all of this together is the Property Identification Code, or your PIC. PICs are allocated by your respective state or territory government, in this case, NT, and they will identify your property as a livestock producing property. So incorporating that PIC number into both the LPA program and the NLIS is the only way that traceability and food safety can be managed nationally. So the objectives, this slide just takes you through what our high-level view of integrity system objectives. Number one is that the LPA and the NLIS are linked through the Property Identification Code system to bring that quality, that food safety, the animal welfare and the traceability all together in the one system. Another key objective is the NVDs or the eNVDs are used to prove that the LPA requirements have been met as the stock moves through the chain. Now, having these declarations and additional attachments digitally held means they stay with the animals on their journey. They are not lost or damaged along the way, and they don't become hard to read, as can often be the case with the paper forms. Another key objective is that all the LPA accredited producers feel supported in running their businesses in accordance with the LPA requirements. And that ultimately gets us to the end, the last box there, which is ensuring that our Australian red meat is safe to eat, is of high quality and remains in demand all over the world, which is what we all want to continue. So before I pass on to Elizabeth, I'm just going to leave you with my top 3 integrity takeaways. Number 1, be sure to renew your LPA accreditation when it falls due. You will receive a notice by email or mail or SMS, and so you'll know when it's time to reaccredit. You can use this process as an opportunity to make sure you are clear and you understand what the LPA program requirements are. And this includes having your biosecurity plan and your organised and all your records up to date. Soon you'll be able to access a personalised recommendations report when you reaccredit or become accredited with LPA, and that will be available to you after you've finalised your accreditation, and it's quite customised. So that's something that's new that's coming out in the coming months. Now, by keeping your accreditation up to date means that you have easy access to the NVD or the free eNVD system. So the eNVD system has undergone a range of improvements over the last year to make it more accessible to different types of users. So we're really encouraging everyone to give it a go. It's also possible to SMS or email submitted consignments or print submitted consignments out as well. But yeah, number 1, big thing to remember is to make sure you've got it all complete and accurate, as that's really important as well. Now, lastly, for my top 3 integrity takeaways is to use species-specific NLIS approved devices to identify your livestock. So it's really important that you use sheep tags for sheep and goats for goats. It's an easy mistake to make, but we've got some information in the presentation that helps you understand the difference between the the types of tags, so that you make sure you get the right ones for your particular species. So I will now hand you over to Elizabeth, and she's going to take you a bit more through the Livestock Production Assurance Program. Thank you.
Thanks, Cherie, and hi everyone. So tonight I'm going to talk about the Livestock Production Assurance Program, or LPA for short, and in relation to some changes coming to the program, and also just a reminder about the program requirements and how you meet them, before I talk about the NLIS requirements and the key things in terms of complying with the NLIS requirements as well. So LPA is the on-farm assurance program that covers off on animal welfare, biosecurity and food safety for when our livestock turn into red meat that we consume. And it's important because that's how you access the LPA NVD, which is required in the processing sector. So before we start off on the requirements, LPA is important because it gives us access to overseas and even domestic markets. So Coles, Woolworths, overseas countries that take all of our red meat require LPA accreditation in order to fulfill those food safety assurances. So this really supports our $74.5 billion industry and keeps opening up more and more markets for us. So it covers off on global price premiums, it covers off on biosecurity on your property, as well as food safety. We have animal welfare in there as well, and we're continually improving it to make sure it's meeting the needs of industry and making sure it can continue to support that market access. So it's really important for those reasons, and it's integral for part of the integrity system and the red meat industry. In terms of some changes that are coming to the program, there's nothing that you need to do. Effectively, it's all to changes are positive, and it's all to help improve the program and how it operates and what it can do in the future. So I'll talk through the new accreditation process and the self-assessment in just a second, but that's a key change that's coming into force on the 1st of September. Other things that the new LPA program rules, which it tells you how to operate the program, allows us to add in voluntary modules, so producers can opt into different modules to provide assurance around different and additional things other than just the baseline requirements. We've also got abilities to use the eNVD system to do additional declarations through the program, as well as looking at how we can reduce the compliance burden on producers as well through audit sharing through different compliance programs that exist within the industry as well. We've also tidied up the program rules and made sure it's efficient, and rules are, very boring and dry, but roles, responsibilities, definitions, and processes definitely clarified to make it easier to understand and administer. So nothing immediately that you have to do about it. It's more improvements to the program to make it better and more future-proof. So a key change that's happening with the program is at accreditation, when you renew or sign on for the first time, we're changing the multiple choice quiz over to a self-assessment tool. So it's not scary, and it's actually quicker to complete than the quiz that's in there at the moment. And what it does is it asks you questions about your on-farm practices in relation to the LPA standards, and it spits out a recommendations report at the end. So it's all about giving you the resources and information that you need in order to improve your practices in relation to LPA. So links directly to the resources you need, and also aims to improve awareness and education around the LPA requirements as well. The LPA learning module, so the e-learning that's available online, is still available, so you can do that at any time, but it's really aimed at trying to improve the experience of accrediting, make it a bit simpler to do it, and also improve that whole overall awareness of LPA requirements. In terms of the program itself, so to be LPA accredited, you need to accredit into the program and then complete renewal every few years. So there's 7 key elements or modules within the program that are mandatory that everyone has to follow, which are up on screen at the moment. So I'm going to walk you through just the key things that you need to remember to meet your LPA requirements of each of these modules tonight. So to start with, we can talk about food safety and LPA. So we produce livestock effectively to make meat, which is food for humans. So food safety is paramount in terms of what LPA does. The first requirement within LPA is around property risk assessment. So property risk assessments doesn't have to be complicated. It's just completing a property risk assessment table, effectively what the risk is if you have one and how you're controlling it, to effectively make sure that any contamination sources on your properties are minimised to prevent contamination in livestock. So really quite simple, can be a farm map, can be a table. We've got templates to help you. The second requirement in LPA is around your animal treatments. So any veterinary drugs or treatments that you're giving your animals, making sure you're keeping really good and complete full records of those treatments. Traceability of those records is really important, especially when it comes to dispatching your livestock and what you're filling out on those NVDs. So you need records to back up what you're declaring on national vendor declarations in particular. So keeping good records of treatment records is absolutely paramount. Also following labels, knowing your withholding periods, training of people doing those as administrations is also equally important as well. The aim there is also to reduce chemical residues in the meat once they hit the processor, which is again a food safety implication as well. And not too dissimilar is the third requirement within LPA, which talks around your chemical use on your property and the feed that you're bringing onto the property if you're doing so. So making sure if you are using chemicals on your property or grazing land where animals are grazing, again, chemical records is really important to make sure that you've got a full understanding of when livestock can go back into those areas to graze without being risk of residues in the meat. Also, if you're bringing in food or fodder or hay or whatever it might be, making sure you're getting information about that incoming feed. The commodity vendor declaration is the preferred form, but whatever form that's going to averse your risk is really important to make sure that whatever the feed the animals ingest isn't contaminated and won't cause a food safety issue at the end. The last sort of requirement around food safety that also leans into animal welfare is around preparing livestock for dispatch. So this one is all around your fit to load requirements, making sure your transport is reputable, that the equipment and facilities that you're using to load the livestock are in good condition and not going to cause harm. Time off feed and water comes into this, especially with effluent management with cattle. So really making sure that you've got the fit to load guide and doing your dispatch and keeping records of who your transporters are is critical around that requirement within LPA. The other requirements in LPA are biosecurity and animal welfare. So for biosecurity, it's all around your property that you're managing or have accredited and having a biosecurity plan about what actions you take in relation to your property. So the key thing here is having a biosecurity plan documented and implementing it. So it can be relevant to your property. So not everything is relevant to every property, but making sure that you have that plan at a minimum is really critical. Knowing what to do in an emergency event is also equally critical. And keeping good records in relation to who's coming and going and livestock coming and going is also really important as well. The other requirement around animal welfare is pretty high level at the moment, but it's all around the animal welfare standards and guidelines that Australia has set. So having a copy of those standards, doing your LPA training module around those standards and training any staff in those standards that do animal husbandry procedures is equally important to make sure your outcome-focused animal welfare is being met across that program requirement. So animal welfare and biosecurity are the other requirements. And the final requirement in LPA I want to talk about is all about livestock transactions and movement. So this is when you're filling out your NVDs and also bringing in your NLIS requirements as well. So I break it down into two different sections within this kind of requirement of LPA. One is if you're bringing livestock onto a property, and the other is when you're dispatching livestock off a property. So this is all around if you're bringing livestock onto your property, making sure you're getting copies of your NT waybill if that's applicable, or your national vendor declaration to make sure you understand the food safety status of the animals that you've just brought. And also making sure that if you are receiving livestock onto your property, that you're completing the NLIS transfer of those animals onto your property in the NLIS database. So if you're receiving, getting a copy of the NVD and doing the NLIS movement is the key things that you need to do. If you're dispatching your livestock, so you're sending them somewhere else to another property, completing an NVD and an NT waybill is important, and also making sure that the livestock are identified with an NLIS device before they leave your property. So they're the two different things that you need to do for incoming and outgoing as well. So making sure that you've got your records to back up the declarations on your NVDs for outgoing livestock and why chemical treatments and animal treatment records are so important. This is just a reminder, so updating the NLIS database is important. It's a legal requirement. So if livestock arrive onto your property, you need to make sure they're recorded and moved onto your PIC in the NLIS database within 2 days of their arrival. And also dispatching livestock, making sure you're completing that NVD and NT waybill as well to dispatch those livestock to make sure that we've got those records. Just some reminders about LPA NVDs. Renee's going to go through the NT waybill requirements a little bit later. But if you're completing your LPA NVD and it's a paper version, make sure the writing's clear, that you're answering the questions properly, you're signing it, you haven't answered questions incorrectly or in yes and no for both, because that doesn't answer the question. Make sure you use the right version, make sure you don't use whiteout, and make sure if you do make changes that you initial that change to say that it's actually a proper change. If you do use the ENVD system, which George will show you a little bit, and there's a little bit of a demo later about that, it does centralize the storage of those for you. They're free to use versus having to pay for the books. It makes sure that it's current. There's no issues with reading it. It's available to the receiver immediately. We've got the app that works offline as well, or the web version where you can still use it and print it off as well. So ENVD is also an option as well. And if you need help or you're interested in learning more about it, we've got loads of resources that we can help you with as well. And speaking of resources, we have so many of them. If you want any information about LPA, we have fact sheets, we have checklists, we have record keeping templates that you can access for free online, and you can print them off, or you can order the record keeping book through your LPA account if you are accredited, and have that posted out for you to use as well. Any type of record is acceptable under LPA. We just have templates to help you if you need them. But the important thing is you keep the records rather than what template you use. So now on to NLIS, or the National Livestock Identification System. So this is the legal requirements around biosecurity and traceability for livestock, which really protects our industry in case we have food safety issues or animal disease outbreaks. So this is critical. So if you're not LPA accredited, this is what you need to do regardless if you have livestock. So it consists of 3 different elements, and they are that you have your property identification code from the government, that you're identifying your livestock with NLIS approved devices, and that you're recording the movements of animals in the NLIS database. So those 3 things work together to make sure we can trace animals really quickly if we need to. And that really makes sure that we have continued access to markets, or if we have issues, we can shut it down, find the impacted animals, and really control things. So really, really important for our industry. Some tips around applying livestock devices. So they're the NLIS tags, making sure that they're applied and identified before they move off your property. Again, that's the requirement. Making sure that the tag stays with the animal for its life. Obviously, if it falls out or it stops working, you can replace that device. If the livestock's no longer on its property of birth, you'll need to put in a post-breeder tag. So for cattle, that's an orange tag, and for sheep and goats, it's a pink tag. And so the breeder tags are obviously the ones that you buy that are white for cattle, and then sheep and goats have the year of birth colour on the screen there. If you do introduce livestock routinely, so you're buying in cattle or sheep or goats, making sure you have on hand some post-breeder tags is important so that you can use them if you need them. Also about tags, we have specific codes for electronic tags. So there's a number that's in the microchip that you don't see, that you actually scan with the scanner, and then you have a number that's printed on the outside. So on the screen here, we've got examples for sheep and goats because there's a national rollout of eID for sheep and goats. They are species specific for sheep and goats. For cattle, it's just the one species, but be mindful that you need to order the right tags, and they are coded specifically for that species. This is just an example if we do have any sheep or goat producers online that approve sheep and goat tags that are available at the moment. Obviously, there's cattle specific tags as well, usually lots of button tags, but these are the sheep and goat ones for you as well. And the final requirement around NLIS is recording those movements in the database. So as the receiver of livestock, it's that you're responsible for that transfer in the database. So really important that if you're using a third party or an agent, that you can go in and check or request an upload ID to confirm that that transfer has actually happened. If you're selling through a sale yard, or you're selling to a feedlot, or going straight to a processor or potentially live export, they'll do transfers. But if you're buying from another producer, making sure that you're responsible for that transfer is really important. If you're using selling platforms like Auctions Plus, that's when you'll be needing to do that transfer, because they don't do that for you. And also, you can record the NVD serial number or the NT waybill number, depending if you're LPA credited or not, in that transfer when you do that transfer onto your property as well, to link together that movement record and the NLIS transfer as well. If you don't have an NLIS account, I would suggest you definitely register for one and get one. You can't break the system. It's easy to play around with it. I know it's a bit clunky and it's a bit old, but it definitely does the job, and you can't break it. So have a play, have a click around, is definitely my recommendation there. That's all my content for tonight. So I'm going to hand over to George Basher, who's going to run you through some key tools and steps and things to do in the NLIS database, and a little bit about eID as well. So George, over to you.
Good day, everybody. My name's George. I've been working on NLIS now since its inception, back in, I think it was December 1999. So it's been a very long time. I'll go through a few things with you today. How to log into NLIS using MyMLA. We'll do some reports, upload some transfers, and as Elizabeth said, or Sheree said earlier, I'll go through and show you an eNVD. So this is the NLIS homepage, and today we're going to log in via MyMLA. So I'll click on login via MyMLA. The beauty about using MyMLA is it's just a password, sorry, an email address and a password. So you're not having to worry about the passwords and the user IDs, which we made up for you. So click on login to MyMLA. And from here, from the MyMLA page, you can link all your accounts that we have control over. And these are LPA, which is the Livestock Production Insurance, NLIS, MSA, for those people who are sheep, eNVDs, and My Feedback. So you can link all these accounts. So you have to remember your user ID and passwords once only, and then via MyMLA. The other key advantage is, if you go via MyMLA, you can access eNVDs, and I'll go through that a bit later. So I'll go continue to NLIS. You see I've got two accounts. This is my producer account, and that's my admin account. So I'll log in as my producer account. Go login. And this is the home page. This is what you see when you log in. Up the top here, there's some inboxes, emails that I get sent out. You may see a banner up here that says the database is going to be down on a Thursday or on a Saturday for maintenance. We'll click on this help button. Help tools. Elizabeth did say there's lots and lots of documentation and guides and tech tips. Here's a whole heap for cattle. So there's probably 40 or 50 there. A few more further down. Use these. They are old, but they're still relevant because they apply to this current system. So we'll go back home. And today we're going to do a cattle transfer. We're going to do a few things. First, we're going to do is a cattle transfer. So I'm working with cattle today. And what do you want to do? Today we want to do livestock moved onto my property. Click on this button. And this is broken up into 3 sections. This account management, you change your livestock types. I'll show you that after I finish my cattle one. Edit account details, change your email address, phone number, so we can keep in contact with you for events like this, for any changes we're going to make. So keep your details up to date. Notify the database of is the doing part. So that's when you're changing data. By changing data, I mean you're moving animals onto your property or off your property, livestock that have died on your property. So this is setting or changing data. And then there's a whole heap of reports. So this is what we call the doing. and this party is the viewing. I'll show you some reports after I've done the transfer. So I'm going to go livestock that moved onto my property. We go and do it on screen. The reason why we do it onto my property is that's the legislative requirement. When you move animals on your property, you do the transfer. So I'll go in, type in the details, manually on screen, and I'll hide this header up here just to give us more real estate. Button up on the right-hand side gives us more real estate, so bigger view. I'm almost 60, so I need bigger screens. So here's a list of tags that I've been able to get. So there's a list of tags. You notice these have got numbers and letters. Elizabeth did show you that these are the number that's typed or printed on the outside of the tag, called the NLIS ID. So it's the visual or NLIS ID. These numbers here are the electronic number on the tag. So off the NVD or the waybill, we write down the tag number, or the PIC number, sorry. Where are they going to? They come into my other property. So these plain looking QDZZ are my test PICs. What's the NVD waybill number? Make a number up like that, and we use today's date. Hit continue. So these numbers you get, by the way, by either visually reading the tag, if there's only a couple tags, a couple of animals that come in, or you can use a scanner and scan these numbers. So you continue. Confirmation. This is you're about to record this movement from this property to this property with this waybill for this transfer date, and there's the tags. We hit send. We get an upload of this is like a receipt number. So if you are audited by LPA and you need to get back to the auditor to say, yes, I've done the transfer, or someone's doing a transfer on your behalf, always ask them for this upload ID, and there it is there. So that's the receipt number or upload ID. And now we're going to look at how that file went through. So I'll click on View My Transaction History. And remember, I am going fast, but you can watch this again and probably get a better understanding the second time around. So I'm going to go what I've done today. So this is my account, my producer account, saying what are all the transactions I have done today. This is the file we just did. And it's got an error. So that's the upload ID we just saw. It's saying that I'm doing a transfer. I did it manually on screen. This is when I did it a minute ago. This is Sydney time. And there was an error. So I click on the error and it tells me that this tag, this device is already registered to the property. So the very first tag I had in the list was already on QBZZ 2222. So where I was transferring them to. So I was transferring 17 tags. One of them was already transferred. And we do this so you can see what the error shows. So there's the error showing this tag was already on this property. Therefore, we can't transfer it a second time. Didn't go through. Therefore, you get an error message. If you get a warning message, it means the transfer did go through, but there were issues. However, it still went through. So that's the simple process of doing a transfer. We'll close this down. Go back to the home, up here in the top left. We'll run a quick report. I want to look at devices on my property. There we go. And you want to see what has been transferred, livestock transferred onto a property, onto this property, QB, we just did the transfer of those animals. And there's the 16. There were 17 tags, but one of them didn't come across because it was transferred on there already. So very simple to run. Elizabeth did say it's simple. When you know which buttons to click, it is very simple and you can't break the system. So play with it. And there's the 16 tags, evidence that you've done the transfer. So if you get hassled, by LPA or the NT department, make sure you give them back that upload ID and give them evidence like this. That's a basic report, pretty easy to run. As I say, it is easy when you're used to it. So get used to it, play around with it. Elizabeth did mention, I mentioned already, you can't break the system. So that's doing a cattle transfer. We're going to go do a sheep transfer now. So I want to work with sheep. It's not there. So I click on what do I want to do? I want to change my types of livestock. Here we go. And we're adding sheep. We'll add the whole lot, the sheep individual and goat individual. You'll see SA as report come a bit later. South American camelids, which are alpacas and llamas. So I'll add sheep and goats. If we continue, we can now see we've got these different livestock now. I'll click on sheep. We'll do the same thing again. I want to move livestock onto my property. There we go. Again, we'll do it on screen. It's always simpler doing it on screen. I'll just grab my tag numbers, which I've got from the previous event. When they're moving them to, they're going this time to my other property, QDZZ3333. Now these have the letters ESW in the middle, and the S means they're sheep tags. The only difference between what I did 5 minutes ago with cattle and the one I'm doing now with sheep is this section number 6. I'll go through that in a minute. So what pig are you moving them from? These are coming from QBZZ222. Asking you to put a waybill number. We'll move them today. Now the number of head. We can put 20 head. There's only 10 tags here. There's only 10 tags we've actually got in animals' ears because there are exemptions. So it's all livestock born after, or sheep rather, born and goats after 1 January. So you could have animals born that are 3 or 4 months old, 6 months older than the other animals. They don't have to be tagged. So this in essence does 2 transactions. It's moving total head count of 20 between these properties. It's also moving these 10 individual animals. So it does 2 things in once at one hit. We continue. Again, confirmation, you're moving these animals. The total head count is 20 between these properties with this waybill number. We hit send. This time it's going to give us 3 upload IDs. This is the original one, 79, and it's broken that into 2 separate files, broken into the mob-based count of 20 and the individual 10 tag numbers. So you keep a record of this upload ID if you need to tell anyone or provide evidence that you've done the transfer. We'll go back to the history. What we've done today in our system. And there's the 3 files. That's the one we just did. That's the one we just uploaded. Was it 79? And then there was 80, was the movement of the 10 individual tag numbers, 10 individual sheep, and then there's the mob-based movement. Again, we've got an error. Tags already there. This one here is saying the tag is not even in the database. You see it's an odd number. So I'll just put a bit of changes in there so you can see different types of messages you get. We'll close that. This was that report I ran a few minutes ago, just before I started on this sheet. I ran a report, how many cattle moved on the property. This is just showing that I've done something in my account. So these are all things I've done in my account today. Back home. We can run the same report. Go back to reports. View devices on my property. We'll look at view devices that have transferred onto the property. This time they'll moved on this one. And there's animal. And species type is sheep. You can change the species type. Cattle. That's the upload we did 10 minutes ago. So the system's pretty good. It's flexible. It's old and it needs updating. We know that, and we are working on it. So that's the next stage. But use the system. It's pretty simple to use. Then I'll go back home. And the final bit we're going to look at today is the eNVD. So on your home page again, go back to cattle, or leave it on sheep. And I want to view my eNVDs, very last thing down the bottom. Click go. Now we want to create a new assignment. You need to select the appropriate account you're looking for. This time we'll do on this one. So this is another account that I've got a link to this account. Another pick, sorry, I've got a link to this account. I'm going to create a new consignment. We won't go through the whole process. It takes 3 or 4 minutes. We can go create a new consignment. I've created a template previously. So if you're moving animals to the same place all the time, or 2 or 3 places, you can create 2 or 3 what they call templates. So you just need to click on that and use that template from now on. We're doing it from scratch. First question is, where are they going to? And there's a list that I've used previously. If they're going to, I was down in Midfield Meats probably 2 months ago, and there was some territory cattle down there. There's Midfield Meats, and that's their abattoir pick. Midfield Meats. It's now got that in the system. Midfield Meats. When they're going tomorrow morning, 6 a.m., 6:20 a.m. The species that I've got access to, we'll keep it on cattle. I'm only sending an NVD, I'm not sending a health declaration with it. And this is using the eNVD. Obviously in the territory, and Renee will go through it, you also need to use a territory waybill. Add the description of the animals. 10 Black Angus steers, 10 Brahman, whatever you send you down there. We'll just go through it quickly. If you own them since birth, this is some of the advantages Elizabeth sort of alluded to. If you say, yes, you've owned them since birth, you don't get an option to say how long you've had them for. The amount of people that tick, and I was at JBS, no, I was in JBS up at Townsville, and the number of people who would say, tick the box, they've been here for 2 to 6 months, and they also tick the box that they were bred on my property. So confusion, they then have to call the producer up and say, which one is it? So eNVD does help, goes a long way. So just keep answering these questions. How long have they been there? Have they been treated? I won't go through too much detail. He's going to run out of time. It's submitted. I've got time to remove it, delete it. So you can still change the head count. One of the biggest questions we get is, well, I don't know how many much you're going to fit on the truck until the day. We can always make sure you change that later, or you can change that later. So I've done the NVD, click on View NVD. There it is there. So it looks like any normal LPA NVD. Obviously, I didn't fill out the information. Now there's the Midfield Meats. Come from my property. Now you can download this on your hard drive, send it as an email, print it off, give a copy to your driver. So from here you can print download it and send it to as an email to Midfield Meats. They will get a copy anyway, straight away. They'll get a copy as soon as I hit submit. They get a copy, so they know what's coming. That sums up ENVD and NLIS. And as Elizabeth said, and I'll say again, have a go, make sure you have accounts, play with it. It's not difficult to use. If it is, after 2 or 3 attempts, you'll get used to it and you can't break it. So that's it for me. Thank you very much for attending.
Thank you, George, for that very measured demonstration. I hope everyone got something out of that. Don't forget, it is recorded, so you can come back to it if you want to have another look to go over anything there in all of those steps. Now, George just took some time to show you the basics for ENVD web-based system consignment creation. And I just wanted to talk to you about the app capability that you can operate and share a submitted consignment using the ENVD app when you're offline, so out of range. So it does have this ability. It does require, for this to work, it does require your receiver to have the app on their phone, and they have to hit receive on their app. So you can't just take a photo of the QR codes and send that, or something like that. That doesn't work. They've got to hit receive and then hover their phone over your phone, and that data will be drawn up into their phone. So it's a bit hard for me to explain all this to you, but what I'm going to do is show you this clip from a video that we've only recently just completed that shows you how to do this. So I'll play this little bit for you, and then after this there's a slide that's got the QR codes for the full length version that you might like to have a look at for both the web and the app. So we'll just play that.
Even with
this
no
video
data
now.
coverage, you can share a submitted consignment in the app with the transporter before they leave. First, get them to sign their declaration on your device, so it's complete there. Then use the Share via QR code feature. The transporter hits receive on their app and scans the codes to get all the consignment information. If your transporter's device is struggling to scan the codes, change the granularity. Doing this will break it down into more QR codes that are easier for devices to scan. When you're back in range, reopen the app for the data to sync. Your receiver and anyone else to whom you've given permission will then have access.
Yeah, so that little clip does show you those steps. You can also send it as an SMS. George just showed you how you can email a submitted consignment or print one out from your phone. You follow a very similar workflow, and you can, like, a similar steps, and you can actually SMS it as well. So there's lots of potential there, offline and online, to share these documents. So yeah. Basically, we always say to check with your receiver first to make sure they're okay to receive it digitally if they've got the app, or would they like you to print out a copy. It's always good to check in first so there's no surprises, but there is a lot of options there for sharing. Now, these 2 videos here are links to what's on our YouTube channel. There's a lot of videos on there to help with these functions, so would encourage you to check it out, and it will all be in the post-webinar pack as well. So yeah, so hopefully you got something useful out of that information. But I'll now hand over to Renee McLean. Renee is the Principal Livestock Biosecurity Policy Officer for the NT government. So it's really great to have her here to take you through the NT specific sheep and goat eID implementation information. So Renee, it's all yours.
Thanks, Cherie, and thanks, George and Elizabeth, for all your time and great information, and thanks to the ISC team for running this. It's great. So I won't keep you too long. I'll just give a quick update on the sheep and goat eID rollout in the NT and some reminders relating to movement documentation. As has been mentioned, we still use the NT waybill in the Northern Territory alongside the NVD, which is required for your LPA accreditation. Another thing to mention, Elizabeth mentioned the use of farm biosecurity plans, and the NT Livestock Act has recently changed to include voluntary biosecurity management plans, and you can use your ISC farm biosecurity management plan for this. You just have some additional information specific to your property to make the plan enforceable. So I'll include some links to the IC team to include in the post-webinar package now as well. So sheep and goat eID rollout has started. Livestock biosecurity officers in the regions have been contacting properties with a PIC that have identified that they have a sheep and thank you for sheep and or goats, and it's a bit of a courtesy to see if their details are still correct, whether they still have sheep or goats, and letting them know about the incentives. Fun fact, although there aren't a large number of sheep and goats in the NT, there are more than people think, with a little over 2,000 goats and 1,000 sheep. All properties that are registered with a PIC and have sheep and goats are eligible for devices and an applicator, so that's even if they only have 2 head. Those with more than 30 head may also be eligible for readers. Sorry, George, you got your hand up. There are also incentives available for properties that operate as transit yards and spelling yards, or facilities that handle a number of sheep or goats. If you have a PIC but you have not updated your property details to reflect that you have sheep and goats, please make sure you do this. You can do that online, and I'll include a link in the package post-webinar, or you can contact your livestock biosecurity officer. The NT aims to have 100% of sheep and goats tagged. This is obviously a phase out of the transaction tags that were a requirement prior. As identification with a device is required prior to movement, we encourage all producers to take advantage of the incentives available now. Even if you think that you're not going to need to move them, it's better to have the tags now than, realise that circumstances have changed and you need to move some animals. So in summary, we've got you want to register your PIC if you haven't already, and if you have registered, make sure your details are up to date, including how many sheep or goats you have. You'll be sent an order form in the coming weeks to complete. You then email that back to the biosecurity team. Once you receive your order, you can insert the tag. And during this time, feel free to contact your livestock biosecurity officers or even myself to discuss. And we'll also include some contact details post-webinar. This is just a really good overview. There we go, of what Elizabeth has already touched on. So you'll need your PIC, you'll think about which devices you'd like to use, the species-specific codes. It's very clear there that you need different devices for sheep, goats, cattle, and happening on as well. And yeah, so and then in terms of movement documents, the NT waybill is a requirement in the Northern Territory for movements of cattle, buffalo, sheep, goats, camels, deers and pigs that originate in the NT. So although you will have to have an MVD as part of your LPA accreditation, the NT legislation requires this movement document as well. As you can see here, just a reminder that there's a section for the inspector of stock. So if you are moving livestock in the NT, remember that there are cattle tick zones. So if you're even purchasing sheep or goats in the Darwin region and moving them to Catherine, you will need to get them inspected and sprayed. And then for importing livestock into the Northern Territory, again, An MVD does not replace this document. We have NT health certificate and weigh bills, and they're species specific. So they're for cattle and buffalo, deers, camels, alpacas and llamas, sheep and horses. So this is a goat one. We've also got a copy of the sheep one there. So sheep, it's important to remember that you need approval from the Chief Veterinary Officer for importation of sheep. Only specific breeds are allowed, and some breeds are allowed for a short period of time for slaughter only, but in most instances it's only certain breeds. And then obviously we've got the cattle and buffalo one as well. And so that's all from me. I just wanted to keep it short and sweet, but definitely reach out to either myself or the livestock biosecurity officers to if you have any questions on sheep and goat eID or movement document requirements or NLIS requirements in the Northern Territory.
Thank you very much, Renee, for that presentation. And thanks to George and Elizabeth as well for joining us tonight, and Callum, who's been helping with questions. We've got a survey in the chat, in the Q&A there, that we'd love you to fill in, just to give us some feedback on what you thought of the webinar and if there's any other topics that you'd like to hear about in the future. This is really good feedback and really helps us. But yeah, thanks very much for joining to learn about eID and integrity systems, and you'll get your pack soon. So keep your eyes out for that, and always reach out if you have any questions or not sure about anything. We're happy to help. Okay, thanks everyone, and have a good night.